Good morning and namaste everyone. It is me Thakur Prasad Rijal, your social studies teacher, class 9. So, today we are going to discuss about a new lesson from unit 5, lesson 5.2, constitutional development in Nepal. So, before starting this lesson, let us revise the lesson that we have discussed in our previous class. Dear students, in our previous class, we have discussed about the lesson Introduction to Constitution, where we have discussed the functions of constitutions, the importance of constitutions, similarly the features that a good constitution must have. So, today we are going to discuss about the constitutional development in Nepal. So, from what time the constitutional development began in Nepal and up to now, how many constitution has been changed, what were the features of the previous constitutions, what were their drawbacks and what is the features of the recent constitution, all about this today we are going to discuss in this class. First of all, let us start from the introduction. So, I think you all know that the constitutional development in Nepal, it does not have a long history, because the first constitution in Nepal that was introduced in 2004 BS. So, it is 2072, means we do not have a long history, more than 70 years, sorry, this is 77. So, near about 70 years history we have. So, the first constitution of Nepal, it was promulgated by Padma Shamsher Rana Prime Minister in 2004 BS. That constitution is called the first constitution, first written constitution of Nepal. So, within a 6 decades, within a period of 6 decades, we have already practiced 6 different constitutions, and recently we have got a new constitution which has been drafted by the Constituent Assembly in Nepali Samvidhan Sabha, and the constitution of recent time is called the Constitution of Nepal 2072. So, we should also know, you can look at the slide also, what is the reason of frequent changes in the constitution in Nepal. I have already told you that. So, within a 6 decade, within a period of 6 decade, the 6th constitution has been already changed. So, what is the reason behind this? I have noted there some of the points. The first reason is the political change, that is the main cause of the frequent change of the constitution. So, if you look at the history, in the beginning from 1993 there was Rana rule, then after democracy came in Nepal, then after panchayat system, yes, in this way again democracy was revived, restoration of democracy, and recently we are going through the federal democratic republican system. So, with the change of the political system, there is the trend of changing in the constitution, that is the one reason. Similarly, the previous constitution of Nepal, they were not written according to the will and aspirations of the general people, that is also another reason. Similarly, there was no direct involvement of citizen while formulating the constitution in our previous constitutions. So, that was only made by the expert or some of the people for fulfilling the ruler's ambition. Because of that also many constitution has been changed in Nepal, and lastly I have kept there the constitution, the previous constitutions, they were not able to address the voice of the citizens of the country of the recent time. So, because of that reason So, frequently the constitution has been changed in our country. So, now we are going to discuss in detail about what were the constitutions that has been implemented in Nepal up to now, what were their salient features and what were their drawbacks. So, first of all, the first constitution, Nepal Government Legal Act 2004 BS. So, the first constitution, Nepal Government Legal Act 2004 BS. So, this constitution I have already told you, it was prepared by the Rana Prime Minister Padma Shamsher. It was supposed to be promulgated on 1st Baisakh 2005 BS, but because of the pressure from other Rana people, so Padma Shamsher has to resign from his post forcefully. That is why this constitution remained the constitution without implementation, or it became the constitution without implementation. And in that constitution there were 6 parts, 68 articles and 1 schedules. So, what were the main features of that constitution? You can see first of all, there was the provision of fundamental rights and duties for the citizen. Similarly, this constitution has the provision of council of ministers. So, country's government could be run by the group of the ministers. Similarly, there was the provision of bicameral parliament. That means, the parliament was divided into 2 parts. One was called Rashtriya Sabha and another was called Bardari Sabha. In this way there was 2 parliament. Similarly, that constitution has also the provision of High Court, Pradhan Nyayalaya, Auditor General, Pradhan Jachaki, and then after Darkhasta Parishad, Public Service Commission. We call Public Service Commission in the present time, but that time it was called Darkhasta Parishad. Similarly, this constitution has the provision of publication of national budget, and there was the provision of village, municipality as well as district panchayat for conducting the local government. So, then what were the drawbacks of this constitution? So, the first is the theory of separation of power was not accepted in this constitution. Similarly, the Rana Prime Minister, they could make and dissolve the council of the minister as per their wish. And the next is the powerlessness of the king. King was merely a puppet in the hand of the Ranas. So, he did not had much more power, means he was not given proper power, he was only the ceremonial king, he was like a ceremonial king at that time. So, these were the drawbacks of the constitution of 2004. Similarly, the next constitution is Nepal Interim Government Act of 2007. This is the constitution which was promulgated after the introduction of democracy in Nepal for the first time, or after the end of autocratic Rana rule. It was promulgated on 17th Chaitra of 2007 BS after the overthrow of the Rana autocracy, and this constitution had 7 parts, 73 articles and 3 schedules. Similarly, in the salient features of that constitution, there was the provision of adult franchise right to vote, provision of council of ministers, economic and financial procedures, there was the provision of election commission, there was the provision of Supreme Court which was called Pradhan Nyayalaya that time, as well as there was the provision of advisory council, Public Service Commission, then after Auditor General as well as directive, it had some of the directive principles also, according to which country was governed. So, these were the features of the Nepal Interim Government Act 2007, but still it had some of the drawbacks. So, they were, the king could form and dissolve the council of minister. Previously Rana could form and dissolve the council of minister as for their wish, but after the overthrow of Ranarshi, so the all power has transferred to the king, and king could form and dissolve the council as per his wish. Similarly, the theory of separation of power was not accepted in this constitution also, and though there was no provision of constitutional amendment, no provision of constitutional change, but the king could address if anything goes beyond his favor. Similarly, the next constitution is the Constitution of Kingdom of Nepal 2015 BS. So, this constitution was promulgated on 1st Fagun of 2015, and it had 10 parts, 77 articles and 3 schedules. So, regarding the salient features of this constitution, so there was the provision of adult franchise, right to vote, and house was divided into two houses were there in parliament, that was called bilateral parliament, House of Representative, Pratinidhi Sabha, and National Assembly, Rashtriya Sabha, and cabinet would be responsible to the House of the Representatives. So, there was the provision of cabinet being responsible for the House of the Representatives. Similarly, there was the provision of Public Service Commission, Auditor General, and some of the constitutional organs also were there, and as well as there was a special right given to the king, that was called King's Emergency Power in Article 55. By using the same power, later on King Mahendra has introduced partyless panchayat system. So, the next provision is the provision of independent judiciary and the Supreme Court. So, though there were some of the good provisions in that constitution, which was promulgated after the introduction of democracy and election of the parliament in Nepal, but it has some of the drawbacks also. They were fundamental rights could be dissolved by the parliament, and king had an active role in power play, but there was but it was mentioned as a constitutional monarchy on its introductory part, on its preamble. There was written constitutional monarchy, but so king could exercise more power, that was another drawbacks. And last one, no one could raise voice against the monarchy. Similarly, let us go to the next constitution, the Constitution of Nepal 2019 BS. It was introduced after the introduction of partyless panchayat system, and it was promulgated on 1st Pause 2019 BS. So, this constitution had 20 parts, 97 articles and 6 schedules. So, regarding the salient features of this constitution, there was provision for people's fundamental rights. So, provision for Council of Minister, Supreme Court, as well as the directive principle of panchayat system, Rashtriya Panchayat, etc. Moreover, the executive power was centralized to the king, and the provision of citizenship based on the descent as well as on the naturalized base. 2 citizenship provision has been made in this constitution, and the last one is provision for constitution amendment and the cases of emergency. So, what were the drawbacks of this constitution? If so, they were sovereignty was vested on the king, the ruling power could be exercised by the king, and the partyless panchayat system, as well as the king could appoint the chief justice and other judges of the Supreme Court as per his wish. There was no any constitutional provision for appointing the chief justice and other judges of the Supreme Court. So, let us go to the next constitution, that is the constitution of the Kingdom of Nepal 2047, and this constitution was promulgated after the restoration of democracy from the first popular mass movement. So, it was promulgated on 23rd Kartik of 2047 BS by King Birendra after the success of People's Movement first, and this constitution has 23 parts, 133 articles and 3 schedules. So, regarding the salient features of this constitution, there was provision for more fundamental rights than the previous constitution had. The ruling power was vested on the people, previously it was on the hand of the king. Similarly, there was the provision of constitutional monarchy, Samvaidhanik Rajtantra in Nepali, multi-party democracy as the directive principle of that constitution, and the last one is there was the provision for independent judiciary, free judiciary, the rule of law as well as adult franchise. It was more democratic than other constitution, however, it had some of the drawbacks. So, the first is there was no provision of inclusion or inclusiveness was not properly practiced by this constitution, and the next is lacking the provision of referendum, means if we did not like that rule, there was no right of selecting another option. So, referendum was not mentioned there, as well as the provision of social justice was not properly accepted. Now, let us go to the second last constitution of our country, the interim constitution of Nepal 2063, and this was also promulgated after the success of popular movement second. It was promulgated on the behalf of the people on 1st March 2063 BS by the legislative parliament, and this constitution had 25 parts, 167 articles and 4 schedules. So, regarding the salient features of this constitution, so there was the provision for unicameral legislature parliament. So, parliament was not divided into 2 houses. There was the competitive multi-party democratic system. Similarly, sovereignty and state power that was vested on Nepali people, and the recognition of Human Rights Commission as a constitutional organ in addition to the previous organ. Previous constitution also has introduced some of the organ as a constitutional organ. A part of this, Human Rights Commission also is recognized as a constitutional organ from this constitution. Similarly, there was the provision of election of the Constituent Assembly, and the appointment of the chief of the army staff would be done by the prime minister. Previously, it used to be done by the king. Similarly, there was the recognition of all the national languages, means all the languages what are spoken in Nepal, they were given the national recognition, and the cabinet was given with the executive power. The ruling power was given on the cabinet. Similarly, it has also some of the drawbacks. The first is, so the document of political consensus rather than it was democratic. It became the document of political consensus. Similarly, the controversy between the power of the president and that of the prime minister. And the last one is this constitution came as a hasty decision, quick decision, without compiling the people's opinion, means without taking the people's opinion, this constitution came in practice. And the last one is it was more flexible, because of the flexibility it was amended several times. So, now the last constitution of Nepal, the present constitution. So, this constitution came in effect from 3rd Ashwin of 2072 by replacing the interim constitution of 2063, and it had 35 parts, 308 articles and 9 schedule, and it was drafted by the second Constituent Assembly, and the constitution was endorsed, or it was passed by 90% of the total lawmakers. So, this is the recent constitution called the Constitution of Nepal 2072 BS. So, if so, what are the salient features of this constitution? That they are the provision of Nepal as a federal state, means it made Nepal a federal democratic republican country. Similarly, there is the provision of multi-party democratic system, means government will be formed by the competition from among the political parties, and the full right given to people, including civil freedom, fundamental rights, human rights, as well as the voting rights. So, the next feature is it has the provision of secularism, or it declared Nepal as a secular state. Next is the executive right of the country, that is given on the council of the minister, and it made the president as the ceremonial head of the state. Executive power, real executive power could be exercised by the prime minister and the president as a ceremonial head. And the next is the provision of bicameral federal parliament. So, in the federal parliament there lies House of the Representative and National Assembly, and the last one is power division among federal, provincial and the local government, means 3 levels of government has been in practice, or it made 3 levels of government: federal government, provincial government and the local government. So, with this we are coming to the end of today's class. I hope you have understood about the constitutional development in Nepal. So, thank you very much and have a nice day. Thank you.